One of the biggest frustrations that I see with marketers and marketing teams who are getting into agent building is that they're generating a bunch of excitement after the build out of an agent. But then after like a week or two later, things are pretty dead. It was actually because nothing around it was really designed to last. But in this workflow, the PMM has Glean analyze all the recent calls and documentation that's available to it through context. Take this prompt and say, take the results from the campaign and build me an executive dashboard that I can now review with my leadership team. If the brain or the context is the foundation, then the workflows that you're already executing on manually today, but could actually potentially be automating, is really where the value is going to live. And so agents that you want to build are going to be how you operationalize these workflows. So what I want to do is show you what kind of process we use and walk you through an example in detail. One of the biggest frustrations that I and my team see with marketers and marketing teams who are getting into agent building is that they're generating a bunch of excitement after the build out of an agent. But then after like a week or two later, things are pretty dead. And that's not because the model that they were using was bad. It was actually because nothing around it was really designed to last. Somebody, maybe taking the credit for building out the MVP, but if we're being honest, there isn't really a real owner. It's missing context that would have made that output, super, super useful. It's missing resiliency. So the moment something needs to change or the inputs get messy, it breaks and falls apart. And usually nobody has built the feedback loop to improve it or has really thought about the kinds of budget that needs to be set aside in order to make sure, that the thing's not running wild. So the takeaway here is that the operating model that you put behind your work is really critical. And if you want agents to scale in marketing, then you have to design for ownership, for context, reliability, and measurement, while also maintaining any of the budgets that you've been able to get approved for this. Now, this is the ADLC, which is a 7-step agent development lifecycle that was developed by Glean. And it's a practical framework for planning, designing, building, launching, and improving agents for revenue and growth teams, but for really any other department within a business. And you can see the whole list here. I'm not going to go through every single one. I do want to call out a couple of these though. Step 2 is the design, defining the workflow, the fit, the users, the inputs, the outputs, and the human review. That's super important. And if you find that as you're going through this design step, that what you want to design is overly complex, then we would recommend that you consider drafting a PRD or a product requirement document. And this will help you stay organized as you work through your requirements. If what you want to build is on the simpler side, then just starting with prompts or some type of outcome specific focus is going to be totally fine as well. Another call out of these steps that I want to speak to just for a second is step 5, which is develop. And this is important because you build only after the workflow and the metrics and all the content and context and checkpoints are super clear. And again, to be clear, develop is not step 1, it's step 5, because you really want to be organized and have all of your ducks in a row before you actually go build something. Because then once you get to step 7, you really want to be able to make sure you're setting aside the time to be monitoring and improving what you've built, tracking the usage, the failures, the feedback from people who are using it, and really the business impact over time. What we see when we're building agents for ourselves and for clients is that it is an iterative process. And if we're not creating the space to be able to monitor and improve, then we're not giving the agent really the opportunity to be able to extract as much value as we're hoping over time. So that's the operating model. And now let me show you what's possible if you actually apply this to different types of marketing workflows that I'm sure that many of you are doing in your normal day. So there's a lot of end-to-end workflows that you can build in marketing. And I want to show kind of just with this slide, the art of the possible without turning this into some type of disconnected list. But as you can see on this slide, these different functions are just a sample of end-to-end workflow opportunities that you can actually take advantage of in marketing. And this is just scratching the surface, but definitely a place to start if you're looking to get going on something. And so what I'd like to do next is just walk you through how we've built the product marketing launch workflow using Glean, because it is one of the cleanest ways to show how the context that Wesley was speaking about, the workflow design that I've just presented, and agents can come together in one coherent story. So this is kind of like a hypothetical, but I'm sure that some variation of this applies to many of you in your businesses. So I'm just going to kind of read this through real quick so we all can kind of align on the same thing. So let's just say, for example, that our PMM just got off a call with the PM about an upcoming feature and needs to develop some messaging. Traditionally, that'd probably take a number of days or weeks to be able to cobble all of that together. But in this workflow, the PMM has Glean analyze all the recent calls and documentation that's available to it through the context. Customers have been asking for this. And so Glean is able to pull together a brief that the PMM can use for the campaign. It saves product marketing a ton of time and headache. So now that the messaging grid's in a good place, it's now time to schedule the kickoff call so that everybody in marketing can now, get the alignment. Makes sense. So Glean can actually identify the list of marketing stakeholders and then analyze everybody's calendar, because it's connected to everybody's calendar, to identify an appropriate meeting time. And then Glean can even draft the agenda and send the meeting invite. So instead of having to have, somebody on the team do all of this, which I'm sure somebody's fine to do, it'd be much faster and easier to just have something do this for us. Now that marketing is all in alignment, we want other departments and other stakeholders to get the insights. And so, what's going to go on with this launch. So let's just say that the demand gen team has taken Glean notes and has Glean build an internal comms document for sales and leadership alignment. Now sales and leadership knows what's going on. They've been able to ask their questions. They've been able to get their guidance. We're all in a good place. And that's all probably happening while marketing, all of us, are creating all the content that needs to be generated for all the different commitments that we're making to our campaign, whether it's, omni-channel or multi-funnel, whatever it may be. So that's going to take some time to do. And I'm sure that many of you are already using AI in some way to create all that. So, that's great that you're starting to figure that out. But let's say you're now finally at launch day. All right, let's go. That's a stressful but also exciting day. The moment that launch happens, everyone starts wanting to know, as I'm sure you can relate, how's this launch doing? And so now, you're starting to collect data from all your systems on the different components of your campaign and, what's working, what's not, what can be optimized in real time, so on and so forth. That takes a ton of work, as I'm sure you can agree. And so in this workflow using agents, marketing ops has Glean pull both quantitative performance, which would be like the registrants, the downloads, website visits, all that kind of stuff, with any kind of qualitative feedback, that's possible. And Glean can even generate a shareable interactive page with results and learnings in just a few minutes, so that you now have a dashboard that you can be sending to leadership or to sales or reviewing as the marketing team as well. My team works with companies for, I think it's been 15 years now, coming up with go-to-market campaigns strategy and then executing that strategy in an omni-channel, multi-funnel world. And I can tell you that regardless of the size and the complexity of these campaigns, they're going to probably take weeks or months to execute. And so, I'm always a huge fan of just trying to get things out faster while also protecting quality. And so any ways that we can always find, any opportunities that we can find in making any of this process more efficient and allowing us to launch faster is going to be critical to be able for us and our client hit the goal, whether it's the lead goal, MQL goal, pipeline goal, revenue goal. So this is, hopefully a good view in terms of like what an end-to-end workflow can look like and how potential agents could be used as a way to speed up this weeks to months timeline into something that's much. This is a list of some of the agents that we've already built, but you can also build lists in Glean as well. And one of the agents that I actually want to show you is that product launch intelligence agent. Actually want to show you the setup of this so you can kind of see, some of the sausage, how the sausage was made. So In the middle of this screen is a PRD that we built because this is somewhat of a complex agent to provide really in-depth instructions for how we want this agent to operate. And so you can see here that we have the tone and length, the content boundaries, a lot of direction in terms of what we want for the workflow. There's context synthesis. There's Asana tasks that are due this week. There's a whole bunch of output generation instructions that we want to provide. There's even formatting rules, edge case handling. And this is all really important because, again, if everything is connected to Glean and you can now pull all this context, then you can now really be able to analyze a bunch of stuff all at the same time. And so if I actually go back into the agent and I actually say that I want to launch a campaign for Private Track, which is just kind of like a fake launch thing that we came up with, you can see that it's doing the thinking and doing the building. It's outlining the tools and workflow for the Private Track search. And this will take like a second. So just kind of in the interest of time, I went ahead and ran this so that you can actually see what it looks like when you finally get the output. But you can see that there's a bunch of core documents that Glean was able to find. And this is now the intelligence brief that it's now come up with. And so you've now got your TLDR of what it is and the business objectives and the launch timing and window and even the launch status summary and some key takeaways that we all need to really be mindful of as we're thinking about wanting to do this launch. It even has things like asset and channel readiness, which is going to be really important for a lot of the different members of the team who are getting involved, risks and recommended actions that we want to be mindful of. It also sources everything that it pulls from. So you can see that it's pulled from an AI launch brief, sales and audience feedback, client sound bites, a workbooks. Even we have a whole Slack thread that it's pulling from. And I've actually pulled a bunch of that stuff up here just so like this stuff is actually real. So like here's the Asana board that has everything that we want to do for the Private Track launch. Here's the AI launch brief that we initially wrote as we were coming up with the concept. Here's a whole list of client sound bites that we were able to pull from. We use Fireflies, so we can tell it to go pull from a bunch of different Fireflies transcripts. If you have Gong or some other type of call logging tool, you could have Glean go pull me sound bites from a whole bunch of different logs. And so again, the concept here is that it's able to pull from just like a ton of stuff in order to create this type of output. And it's even saying like these are the Asana tasks that are due this week that need to get done. So not only is this strategic, but it's also like getting to be super tactical, where now everybody can divide and conquer and go get their stuff. So that's the 360-degree launch agent. The second thing I wanted to highlight from that slide was the scheduling of the meeting, which I just think this is the coolest thing. So I have, again, just to kind of in the interest of time, gone ahead into the AI assistant and I've just said, I want you to find some time for me and some of my colleagues to discuss the launch. And so, today's, towards the end of the week, and I want to meet with my team on Monday. And so because it is connected to all these different tools and it has all this context, it was able to find a few workable Monday options for all the different stakeholders to meet. And it actually gave me a couple of different times of when I would actually like to meet with my team. And so I ended up picking this time, 10 o'clock in the morning on Monday. And it's actually asked me if I want to open it up on my calendar. And it actually did just go ahead and add it to my actual calendar. And so here's the launch discussion from the prompt for 10 a.m. on Monday. I'm based in Austin, Texas. So this is Central Time. But like, I just think this is so cool that you can, again, take all of this context and leverage this to really speed up and streamline your workflow. So that's the second call out from that slide. The third call out, which was communicating with sales, we've actually built another agent where it's taking all of this context around the launch campaign and creating an automated process to communicate to sales on whatever's going on. And so the way that this agent operates is that I can kind of self-select I can type whatever I want in case I wanted to do something, but I can also start with, like a sales summary for Private Track AI. And what this is actually, so that's kind of actually what I did. Give me a sales summary for the Private Track AI launch. And so now I've been able to create a document that I can now pass on to sales. So if me or the team has been asked to join a sales call, then we can walk everybody on sales through what's going to go on with the product launch. What are the key proof points? What are some of the likely objections that sales may have to face when they're engaging with prospects or clients? What's the suggested sales motion? What are even the suggested next steps? And so again, this is another way to really save time and streamline this workflow from something that's going to take a minute to grab all of this and then be able to work with sales and collaborate with sales into doing something much faster. All right, last cool feature from that whole workflow that I want to call out is all the reporting. So I want to show you very quickly that this is just a spreadsheet with a ton of data. This has the daily performance. This is channel summary. This is some feedback stuff. So there's a lot of stuff in this spreadsheet. This is the sales and audience feedback that we're getting. This is a document that's got post-launch learnings that we've been able to draft. And now let's just say again, per the slide, that the ask is, all right, what do I do with all this stuff? How am I going to communicate this to my manager, my VP, my CMO, to the executive team? Like, how do I now synthesize all this data into something that I can now share in the right way? So again, what's super cool here is that you can just take this prompt and say, take the results from the campaign and build me an executive dashboard that I can now review with my leadership team. And it now spits out an HTML landing page with all the data and insights that come from all the context that it's now been given because it's connected to all these tools. So you can see a lot of the data from that spreadsheet are showing up here. There's a ton of leadership insights of things of what worked, what needs to be tightened up, what are some of the strategic gaps, some executive takeaways, some best next moves. And so now, for us, as we're working with folks, we're now able to, save a whole lot of time of having to not have to make so many presentations because, again, I can just put in a prompt and get an HTML landing page that's pretty dynamic with, the way that it can be presented and displayed to, now being able to launch these types of end-to-end campaigns much faster. So I hope I wanted to be mindful of time, but I hope that these kind of walkthroughs with how Glean is capable of has been helpful to you.